Slums are everywhere, and they have been with us ever since the first signs of industrialization. The word slum was most likely coined in 1845 to describe the poorest parts of East London. This is the infamous Charles Boot map of London that describes the poverty levels in various streets and alleyways in 1889. The streets coloured in black are considered the slum areas and places with lots of crime, whereas the streets in red are middle class or better. It was essentially the first map of crime and slums ever made. So because of increased industrialization, slums became common in the US and Europe in the early 1800s, and today they can be found all over the world. The last 2 years I was living in the Philippines, and there I discovered it had one of the biggest slum communities in the world. And I began to wonder, how do slums start? Why do they exist? And what is it really like living in one of them? By 2025, China intends to move 250 million people into cities in order to make 70% of its citizens urban residents. That means that China is planning to urbanize enough people to create another 20 or 25 cities, equal in size to the likes of New York, London, or even Tokyo. And the reason it's doing this is to transform its economy to be based on services rather than manufacturing and production of goods, in order to transition into a modern economy similar to the likes of US or the UK. And it's not just China going through this transition, many countries around the world are also. But there is a cost. Many rapidly growing cities simply cannot manage the influx of people and provide enough amenities for housing them. The results are what are known as slums. Life in slums can be tough and dangerous, as infrastructure is generally very limited or non-existent. But slums can also be vibrant places of economic and social innovation. As we shall see, residents of slums can come together to create their own social organizations and even infrastructure projects. The first slum is one of the most densely populated places on Earth, where about 1 million people live in just a little bit more than 2 square kilometers. In the middle of India's commercial capital lies Asia's second largest slum neighborhood, Dharavi, easily the most famous slum in the world, popularized in the movie Slumdog Millionaire. The slum was founded in 1884 during the British colonial era and grew because of an expulsion of factories and residents from the city centre by the colonial government and from the migration of poor rural Indians into urban Mumbai. It is located between Mumbai's 2 main suburban railways and within the shadow of the city's skyscrapers. This makes it a prime residential location for workers employed in Mumbai, avoiding its steep rents. The rent can be as low as $4 per month, allowing people to save their incomes, a big benefit for its residents considering Mumbai is one of the most expensive cities in India. Residents of Dharavi have to live through overcrowding, pollution, communicable diseases, lack of proper hygiene and sanitation facilities, as well as lack of access to adequate clean water supply. Toilets are rarely found in the privacy of the home, and residents are expected to share 450 community toilet blocks. These problems in turn lead to cases of diarrhea, malaria, tuberculosis, diphtheria, and typhoid fever in children. However, despite the dingy reputation of the neighborhood, Dharavi is actually a dynamic, close-knit community with gangs and violence, a thing of decades past. Today, it is a thriving economy of about 15 to 20,000 small factories that manufacture a variety of products such as embroidered garments, leather goods, plastics, and pottery, generating millions of dollars each year. Their annual business turnover is estimated to be between 650 million and $1 billion US. Although this is not necessarily reflected in the people's average income of $2 or less per person per day. Another important industry here in Dharavi is waste segregation, which proves integral not just for Mumbai but for the whole of India. Plans for removal of the slums have been expressed, but most of the residents are apprehensive because this would cause the disruption of the informal yet dynamic economy and the community they have established here.
कि कुमार को हटाओ तो पेट पे लात मारो पहले हम लोग को गोली से मारो फिर इधर तुम लोग टावर बनाओ.
It is especially interesting to note that the literacy rate in Dharavi is recorded to be 69%, making it the most literate slum neighborhood in the country. A group of young girls are known for being creators of apps that aim to better the lives of people in the slum. One of the apps developed by the girls, which is a distress alarm for women who find themselves in danger. Nearly 4 million people live in slums surrounding Manila, and the poorest of these neighborhoods is called Tondo. a well-known slum in the Philippines' bustling capital of Manila. The slums of Tondo is a settlement that developed to the northern side of the Pasig River. It lies parallel to the walled city of Intramuros, a stronghold where the rich and powerful resided in the distant past. Its beginnings as the slum neighborhood we know of today occurred after World War II, when plots of land like it were left open for war refugees and displaced families to occupy. Today, Tondo spans around 9 square kilometers and makes up 2 districts of the city of Manila. District 1 hosts the North Harbor Port, which is the main port serving the capital. District 2, on the other hand, is the eastern part of where Divisora is located, a complex of street stalls where people do some bargain hunting. The port and the shopping centers are big sources of income and revenue for the residents, but there are also small factories and other centers of trade and transport that give its people sources of income as well. Many residents still make a living out of garbage scavenging, earning between $2 and $6 a day. In the 2015 census, the population count in Tondo was recorded to be 631,000, with an estimated density of at least 70,000 people per square kilometer, making it the most populous district in Manila, which is the most densely populated city in the world. In the slums, shacks and shanties can be as small as 10 square meters, built using cheap, lightweight materials and located by highly polluted rivers or streams, under bridges and along railroad tracks, besides garbage dumps or any vacant spot. People resort to open defecation or using plastic bags. As a result of these circumstances, children suffer from malnutrition and stunting, while the rest suffer from waterborne diseases and tuberculosis. Flooding is more of a problem here as it is in the whole of the Philippines, and the risk for fires is high because of lightweight materials, intense heat, and overcrowding. With a reputation as the gang capital of the Philippines, Tondo is still a center of criminal rings, occasional street brawls, illegal cockfighting, drug crimes, glue sniffing, and random street thugs, which is why men carry balisongs. Through the years, Tondo has already grown into a community composed not just of the slums it is known for, but also of mid-rise condominiums, hospitals, schools, churches, shopping complexes, and some small factories. Next is an interesting example of a slum that has kind of built itself out of being a slum. Karachi is a city in Pakistan with over 23 million residents and hosts the largest slum in the world, known as Orangi Town, nestled in its northwest. The population growth rate of Karachi is approaching 5% a year, and with this growth rate, the population has outpaced the city's ability to provide for its residents. Orangi Town spans almost 60 square kilometers, divided into 13 union councils, and with a population of about 1.5 million. Most of the workforce are blue-collar workers, working in the industrial city nearby, or in one of the local cottage industries. There are also small shops in the area that sell different kinds of products. People's income averages around $1 per day. It began as Kuchi Abadi, the local term used for informal settlements, with its population exploding in 1971 due to migration from East Pakistan after its War of Independence. Today's Orangi Town has seen huge developments over the years thanks to the joint efforts of its citizens with the guidance of the team behind Orangi Pilot Project. Before the project's beginnings in 1980, the residents suffered from a multitude of problems, the main ones being a lack of sewage system, a lack of power supply, and poor housing conditions. The OPP approach was to train and educate Orangi's residents in solving their own concerns. Some were trained in construction techniques for them to improve their housing and environmental conditions. Women were educated in health and illness prevention. A charity fund was set up to provide loans for the people to be able to start small businesses, and training in income-generating ventures was given, like embroidery, stitching, beauty parlors, and dairy cattle operations. One of the infamous successes of this initiative was the residents pooling $2 million for the installation of a working sewage system. In the end, the people were able to help themselves, not just by installing the sewage system, but even turning their shanties into single 2-story cement houses, building roads, schools, clinics, hospitals, and gaining better water supply. However, pollution and water scarcity is still a problem, resulting in diseases like cholera, dengue fever. In fact, a significant percentage of the country's morbidity and mortality is from waterborne diseases. Crime rates are quite high, most involving gangs and turf conflicts, with an enduring underground economy. However, crimes against women have been especially huge, with majority of women having had experienced sexual harassment, rape, and/or being mugged. Last, I researched one of the most notorious slum neighborhoods in Africa. Coined to be the biggest slum in Africa, Kibera is located approximately 7 kilometers southwest of Nairobi, the capital of Kenya. The first informal settlers in the 2.5 square kilometer expanse were Nubian soldiers who were allowed by the British colony to settle in the forest at the edge of Nairobi in return for their service during the war. In fact, the name of this settlement comes from the root word Kibera, which is the Nubian term for forest. The Nubians spread urbanization in the area and welcomed many settlers, and thus the community grew to what it is today. The residents have created a diverse array of community services for themselves, with the presence of shops, hair salons, shoe cleaning enterprises, schools, clinics, repair shops, and banking points, as well as places of worship. The average income is only about $1 per day, with roughly half of the population unemployed. There is no up-to-date reliable source for the exact number of inhabitants in Kibera. Partly because of the fluidity of the population, media and politicians often mention figures between 700,000 and 1 million, but a report from the UN in 2005 estimates only about 400 to 700,000 inhabitants, while other recent sources estimate much less at around 200,000. This makes its reputation as one of the biggest slums in the world quite debatable, but slum populations in general tend to move quickly with the seasons. Because of its proximity to Nairobi, a lot of blue-collar workers who are employed in the capital take residence in Kibera for the comparably lower rent, which is an average of $10.50 USD per month for a typical 12 by 12 foot house. These are usually home to at least 8 people, made of mud walls, dirt or concrete flooring, and corrugated tin roofs. These roofs quickly turn to brown because of rusting, earning the neighborhood the nickname Chocolate City. A practice known as flying toilets is common, where the residents defecate into plastic bags and throw them out of the window because the use of public toilets incurs a fee and it's unsafe after dark. Tensions between different groups lead to occasional street brawls, but drug crimes, glue sniffing, and alcohol intoxication is also prevalent, and life expectancy is 30 years because of the high infant mortality rate. These are only a few of the most notorious slums in the world. There are many more scattered across the globe, and there will likely be more as large-scale migration to urban centers continues. Indeed, over the coming decades, we will see the birth of more and more megacities with populations of 10 million. Some of the fastest growing are Karachi, Pakistan, Jakarta, Indonesia, and Guangzhou, China. While it is true that slums in themselves are not great for their residents, they are a necessary evil, providing opportunities for those whose needs are not being met by their host cities, and as such are an unavoidable consequence of modernization, with less opportunities for people to make a living in rural areas due to automation replacing the need for large rural labor forces. I hope you found this video engaging, and if you did, please subscribe, because each time I get a new subscriber, it literally makes my day. Now have a guess where this is, and I will see you in the next video. Geoperspective out.